you're seeing a get together of two former political allies. No, two former political opponents who are now becoming allies. RFK Jr., he did not quit his presidential bid. He suspended his ticket in states that are controversial, but he wants you to vote for him for president in places where Trump isn't at risk, I guess. All the swing states, he took himself off the ballot. He's probably going to play a part in Trump's administration. They had that leaked call a couple weeks ago that was kind of foreshadowing all this. And realistically, I mean, this is what was going to happen from the get-go. So we're going to cover that. Jimmy Dore is going to cover RFK Jr.'s speech at the Arizona rally, which was like 10 minutes away from from RFK's announcement that he was suspending his campaign. And then we have to go back to redacted because there are some questions about the quickness with which they got rid of the alleged shooter's body, Thomas Matthew Crooks, from the AGR building and scrubbed the scene forensically. And really an interesting situation that makes you say, how and why did they do these things if he's just a lone gunman? And then there's also a story where he's got some NATO connections, and the detonators he had and the online communications and the encryption and the accounts go back to some place called Brussels, where something that's called maybe NATO might have like their headquarters. But there's no such thing as Operation Gladio. It still does not go on today. And I'm sure assassinations on American presidents that would cause a civil war would have no benefit to the Anglo-American establishment, nor the people that would, like to rule the world. So let's jump into it with Jimmy. Shut the door. That's his nickname.
Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, Jacksonville, Florida, Tempe, Arizona, and Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. After Bobby gave that speech today announcing that he's going to drop out of the swing states, but he's going to stay in the red and blue states on the ballot, that he's going to drop out of the swing states because he doesn't want to hurt Trump. He certainly doesn't want to help Kamala Harris. So he goes to this in Arizona. He goes to this rally that Trump's doing in Arizona, and Trump introduces him, and people go crazy for RFK. This has made his whole life as an environmentalist. And now he's fighting Big Pharma the last 10, 15 years, which is why the media has turned him into a crazy. But of course, he's not crazy. He's on point with that. He knows exactly what he's talking about when it comes to vaccines and the FDA and health and safety and the safety of our food supply. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And Republicans are cheering that. So Trump said he's going to put RFK on the presidential commission. And guess what? For what? To put him on a commission to release the assassination docs on RFK and JFK. Watch this.
And this is a tribute in honor of Bobby. I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent Presidential Commission on Assassination Attempts. And they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
That's unbelievable. And he also said prior to this that he is going to obliterate he said the Democrats love the deep state. I'm going to obliterate it. Now, the last guy who said that was JFK, and we know what happened to him. So it seems like Trump has got his balls back, or I don't know what's going on, but something happened. Here we go.
And they will also conduct a rigorous review of the attack last month. But I tell you, I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination.
So that's amazing. So then he introduces Bobby, lets Bobby give a speech. He gives like a 4 or 5 minute speech. And I want you to listen to this. And I want you to, it's remarkable for several reasons. One, that the Republicans are cheering for it. Now, Glenn Greenwald talked about this a year or two ago, about the difference between Trump Republicans and establishment Republicans. There is a difference. And so watch this. Now, Bobby made his bones as an environmental lawyer. They're cheering an environmentalist. That's what's happening at a Republican presidential campaign event.
Thank you. Now, a few hours after the assassination attempt at Butler, I got a call from a safe food advocate named Kelly Means, who's been fighting for many years to try to end the corruption at CDC and FDA and USDA.
So he's talking about taking on the regulatory agencies and fighting big corporations. And they're cheering it at a Republican presidential rally. Let that sink in, how it has flipped and how immediately Donald Trump is miles to the left of Kamala Harris. He is far, far to the left. Like I said before, when he announced he's going to get the taxes off tipped wages, I go, he's immediately already to the left of Kamala Harris. He's already. And then Kamala Harris, then she copied his proposal because it was so popular. Even though a year earlier, she cast a tie-breaking vote to make sure you could go after tipped wages. So, this is enormous. This is really kind of groundbreaking, what's happening.
And these institutions, these regulatory agencies are actually run by the big food processing companies, the big ag and the chemical companies that they're supposed to regulate.
And they're booing big corporations that run our food production and chemical companies. He's got Republicans. I know I'm repeating myself, but he's got Republicans at a Republican presidential rally cheering and booing big corporations, cheering him to regulate them and clean them up and get the corruption out of and booing these big corporations. That is amazing.
He said to me that he'd been advising me for many years and on my campaign. And he told me that night that he was also advising President Trump. And he asked if I would talk to President Trump. And I said, of course. And about a few minutes later, I got a call from the president. And we talked. We had a very good talk. And then he invited me to come see him the next day. And I went to Minneapolis and saw him. We met again a couple of weeks later in Florida. And we talked not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. Our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. Don't you want healthy children? And don't you want the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? And that's what President Trump told me that he wanted. He also told me that he wanted to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy.
That is amazing. The end of the grip of neocons on our foreign. Guess who's a neocon? Joe Biden. Guess who else is a neocon? Kamala Harris. Guess who else? Everybody who runs the Democratic Party. They're neocons. They're the party of George Bush and Dick Cheney now. And this is why CNN cut away when he started saying, this is when they cut away? No, they don't want this message. Okay, here we go.
He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States.
He's now anti-war. So now Trump becomes anti-war. He sounds like, first of all, right now, that sounds like what we say on this show. That's what I say at all my live events. You know, lefties just want to end the wars, invest that money back here, and have healthcare that doesn't bankrupt us. And he's going to clean up the food supply. He's going to get everybody healthy. Here we go. The crowd is cheering.
And the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country. And don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country?
This is unbelievable.
And he told me that he wanted to end the censorship because the whole basis of American democracy is the free flow of information. And we know that a government...
He's pro-free speech, anti-censorship. He's the peace candidate. And he wants to go after big agribusiness and the regulatory agencies and fight to clean up our food supply from big corporations and chemical This is what the Democrats should be saying. Because, first of all, it's popular. Second of all, it's the right thing to do. This is what people have been done. This is populism. And CNN doesn't want to show you that. The Democrats don't want to show you that. And now Trump and Bobby Kennedy are miles to the left of Kamala Harris. If this message gets out, which it will, I'm bringing it to you right here on this show, they will crush Kamala Harris. Crush her. All the fake, phony, empty enthusiasm that I saw at the Democratic convention this week for Kamala Harris, which is just fake. It's just based on she has a vagina and she's black. That's all it is. That's all it is. And people are projecting things onto her. You talk to anybody in that Democratic convention hall, nobody has a clue about policy and they don't care. Okay, here we go.
That can silence its opponents has license for any kind of atrocity. And can you think of any time that you can look back in history and say that the people who were censoring were the good guys? They're always the bad guys, because it's always the first step down that slippery slope to totalitarianism. And don't you want a president who's going to protect America's freedoms? And who is going to protect us against totalitarianism? And I want to ask you again, don't you want a safe environment for your children?
He's got Republicans.
Don't you want to know that the food that you're feeding them is not filled with chemicals that are going to give them cancer and chronic disease?
They're cheering environmentalism.
And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
They're cheering this
Thank you
out.
all very, very much, and God bless you, and God bless America.
That's amazing. What you're seeing here is historic. That is amazing. That is the complete flip-flop of the parties. There's Trump and Bobby Kennedy being populists, being anti-war, pro-free speech, anti-corruption in government. That's what's happening. He miles to the left of Kamala Harris. How is Kamala Harris going to combat this? She's not. She's not, because she's an idiot and she's corrupt. 100%. 100%. And so this leaves the problem of Israel-Palestine, because they have the same position as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Tim Walz, right? So that's the big problem, right? Well, what I've been saying is, Trump likes to make deals. And what he'll often do is be over the top in his rhetoric, and then like he was with North Korea, and then make a deal. And he said, I would end that Ukraine war in 24 hours. And he knows exactly how to do it. Hey, I'm going to cut off your money. That's it. And then that's it, because that is how what would end it. That's the same thing that would end the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm going to cut off your arms and I'm going to cut off your money. And that's that. Because Israel's economy is cratering right now.
Well, bombshell new details revealed around Trump's would-be assassin, Thomas Matthew Crooks. Trump's would-be assassin, did he work for NATO? Did he have some sort of connections with NATO? This is being thrown around. And of course, that's on the speculation side. But why? Why would people be questioning that all of a sudden? Well, because thanks to the New York Post last night and this bombshell report, Trump's shooter Thomas Crooks had encrypted messaging accounts in Belgium, Germany, and New Zealand. I'm just going to read directly from this piece, if you don't mind. So Trump rally gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks used encrypted messaging accounts on various platforms, located in Belgium. New Zealand and Germany, according to a member of the congressional task force investigating his assassination attempt against former President Trump. Representative Michael Waltz of Florida, who is an Army Special Forces veteran, and he's one of 13 lawmakers right now who's on this task force, on this bipartisan task force looking into this. He told reporters that he thinks that these overseas accounts show that, in fact, he was not acting alone. I mean, this is what? You have a sitting member of Congress saying that he believes that this has raised his suspicion that he likely wasn't acting alone. And certainly immediately regarding the shooter's movements, saying that these overseas accounts piqued his suspicion immediately regarding the shooter's motives. Who was he talking to? Quoting him now, why does a 19-year-old kid who's a healthcare aide need encrypted platforms not even based in the United States but based abroad, where most terrorist organizations know it's harder for our law enforcement to get into, asked Waltz.
Now, Clayton, you have been a 19-year-old boy in Pennsylvania. How many encrypted overseas accounts, or how many people did you communicate when you were 19 and politically interested that were in other countries such as these?
To me, as a 19-year-old kid in Pennsylvania, yes, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. To me, Europe seemed like Mars,
right.
like none of my friends had like a connection to Belgium, right. or New Zealand or Germany or NATO. I mean, no, that was
bloodlines or the German club or things like that, or foreign exchange students. Maybe one out of a whole school would go.
Now, granted, I graduated high school in 1995, so we didn't have, I had bulletin board systems where my friends and I would log in and play video games,
sure.
Like on our bulletin board, but it was all text based. You'd log in and make your move, and then like a day later you'd log in again. And a dial-up modem. Now, of course, you've got cell phones and all of these things. But how is a 19-year-old kid? Why would he need these?
This is highly irregular. I think we can agree.
And we also know that Crooks was shooting guns at the same training ground as the Department of Homeland Security. So that's curious. So why would he be talking? Why would he have encrypted apps that are located in, at the heart of NATO? And why would he be training at the same gun training center as Department of Homeland Security? It's all very interesting. Mike Benz.
I mean, this guy really did not want to go incognito at all, right? Walking around with ladders and training where law enforcement was.
Right, being out in broad daylight. So there was no incognito in this. He was like the anti-Batman.
Yes.
He was like daylight Batman. So here's Mike Benz, cybersecurity expert, says kind of weird. A 20-year-old kid in Pennsylvania shooting guns at the same gun range used by DHS agents had an encrypted messaging account in Belgium where NATO is headquartered. Kind of weird, Mike Benz says. Congressman Walz says the evidence has led him to believe that Crooks didn't act alone. I mean, what? Sitting member of Congress says the evidence that he's looked at on this task force says that he believes that Crooks didn't act alone.
Well, okay, this is Representative Michael Waltz from Florida, not Walz, the Democratic vice president. He does not seem to care very much. They are very incurious, the Democratic Party, about this.
There's no way a 20-year-old kid has a detonator, 3 bombs, he said, encrypted messaging platforms, based abroad, seen walking around for more than an hour beforehand and totally ignored, according to Congressman Walz. So Crooks, here he is. So this new video released over the past 48 hours shows Crooks at 4:26 p.m. before the assassination attempt. You can see him here just lollygagging around. And as friend of the show, Dan Bongino, pointed out, where was the CSU, the counter surveillance unit, with this? Where for an hour beforehand, like they are trained to study these types of individuals who are sort of by themselves. They look totally out of place. This guy, more than anything, looks totally out of place.
Well, why do you say that?
Compared to the vendors and the other individuals that are there ahead of time setting up.
I don't know. This walk in and of itself does not raise suspicion.
Okay, but that's just one little snippet. And the only reason we have this video is because one of the vendors was there early setting up.
Right.
And so he was just sort of panning with his camera, and he realized later that he had this on his camera.
You don't know that this guy doesn't, have a local bee shop and is just walking back to the truck for something.
A local bee shop, maybe. Okay, I'm just saying.
The fact
I'm
that
not a counter surveillance operative.
Though, I mean, think about how much they track us. That he has been in shooter training with DHS and in very suspicious.
Yes.
Then that should have raised the flags. That that person who's been doing that is here and walking around alone and raising flags.
So more than all of this is what happened to his body. What happened to Crooks's body? Why did the FBI burn his body? Why did they cremate his body? The FBI secretly released would-be Trump assassin Thomas Crooks' body to be cremated before Representative Clay Higgins could examine it. According to a preliminary investigative report that's been released, the FBI cremated his body without telling anyone 10 days after the PA rally tragedy. So they took his body, and Clay Higgins. This is from Clay Higgins. My effort to examine Crooks's body on Monday, August 5th caused quite a stir and revealed a disturbing fact. The FBI released the body for cremation 10 days after July 13th. On July 23rd, Crooks was gone. Nobody knew this until Monday, August 5th, including the county coroner. Law enforcement, sheriff, etc. Yes, Butler County coroner technically had legal authority over the body, but I spoke with the coroner, and he would never have released Crooks's body to the family for a cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI.
What?
What are you trying to hide? What are you trying to hide? You don't want us to know how he was killed, exactly what rounds took him out?
From which direction?
Which direction? What as part of the autopsy? I mean, it's unbelievable. And now we know from Real Clear Politics overnight, according to Susan Crabtree, Secret Service agents placed on leave after the Trump assassination attempt. So now and this is unbelievable because 3 weeks ago, according to Real Clear Politics, remember acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe was pushing back on this. Remember, he was like, we are not going to just randomly place people on leave and all of this sort of stuff. And now they're on leave. Why are these individuals not fired? Why are they're just placed on administrative leave? That's like free vacation during August when everyone else is off enjoying their vacations. They get administrative leave. Administrative leave occurs when a federal employee temporarily leaves their position and work duties, either because of misconduct investigation, medical or mental health issues. They still receive pay and benefits. But those decisions, of course, are left to the agency leadership. And there seems to be this like back and forth now between the Pittsburgh, like the Butler Police Department, of course, and the Secret Service, and them throwing him back under the bus. But encrypted messaging platform in Belgium, whereas Mike Benz points out, it's very interesting that NATO is centered there. On top of that, you have all of these pieces of equipment that are found on his body from Representative Waltz, who's saying 3 bombs, detonators. Who was he working with? He now believes he was not acting alone. He's on the task force investigating this. And you have the FBI authorizing a cremation of his body, going around the investigation in order to cremate his body. To do what? To hide what? Be very interesting. Let us know what you think about this.
Yes, that is very damning. And I would like to know what his parents authorized. What did his family authorize?
Right.
Those are very strange data points.
Will we see any sort of autopsy examination? No, apparently not. We're not going to get to see that.
Right.
And I guess the task force also is not going to.
And when it comes to the JFK assassination, those were really important points. What direction did the bullet enter? Where did it come from? What was the trajectory? I guess we're not going to get that.
Calvin Johnstone in our chat says, and redacted, where was his body? Who took it? Where were the cameras? There was cameras all around there. Yeah, exactly. Who removed his body? How did they get it off the roof? Why don't we see that footage? We have the body cam footage. Who took it? Where did it go? Was it sitting in the county coroner's office for those 10 days before it was authorized to be cremated? Who did that?
Yeah.
It's stunning. I mean, but not really surprising at all. There are those, and I just want to be careful here because there are those kind of throwing around the idea that there's this Iranian plot, right? And I've been very cautious. I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So who took Crooks's body? I think his parents probably took it and they had a burial for their son. Why did the FBI authorize it, and allow it to be destroyed? Maybe they didn't want anyone to get any evidence on their situation. So I got 2 books. Well, I got 4 books. First, we had heard from Jack Posobiec about the Romanovs being killed. At the time of the Romanovs, MI6 had an agent called Sidney Riley. And on the back of this book by Robin Bruce Lockhart, who is in and of himself an interesting character in history, James Bond is someone I dreamed up in my imagination. He's not a Sidney Riley. Sidney Riley was the real type of thing. And Sidney Riley operated during, what did they call the plot? There was a plot that took place, the Trust plot back around the Bolshevik Revolution. They might have had something to do with the Bolshevik Revolution. And that might be reflected in the movie The King's Men or The King's Man. I think it's the second one with Rafe Fiennes, but they show the whole overthrow of the Russian Empire. But I also wanted to offer this book, The Rescue of the Romanovs. Newly discovered documents reveal how Tsar Nicholas II and the Russian imperial family escaped. These are from documents from the 1970s that were declassified. It's an interesting book. I don't have time to go into it now, but I just wanted to point out, but there might be more to that story. I'm not sure. But that would be the book where you could find out more. If we had more time, I'd go into it. But right now, I'm sliding over to Operation Gladio, because that is a type of operation that might go on and employ someone like a Thomas Crooks. And then you've got NATO's secret armies, which is also about Operation Gladio. And these types of stay behind networks in Europe probably have proliferated in a more global fashion. And for these things to be participating in America, on American soil, I don't know that it's unheard of. You might even look into 9/11 in terms of Operation Gladio, and English-speaking people who are internationalists precipitating terror down on nation states whose freedom might oppose a globalist, internationalist, communist, collectivist type of agenda, where they want to steal everyone's productivity and get away with it. That's the gist. It's a vehicle for slavery and plunder. But Operation Gladio is something you definitely want to read up on. And we could even go over here to the history blueprint real quick and look up Operation Gladio. If you are a Grand Theft World member, you could do this as well. Operation Gladio B, 1997 to present. So there is a current incantation. But we go back to the original Gladio, starts with NATO in 1948, goes up to 1996, allegedly. NATO, MI6, CIA, joint operations. There's a whole lot of history to that. So if you don't want to be left out in the Cold War, then you should learn about they, them, those who've been playing both sides of the capitalist, communist cartel system. And many of these people, like George Kennan, they might have brought things like the IMF to the world. Right. So there's an international game. It's being played against individuals. And this is part of what we're looking into with respect to tonight's news and featured content. Now, in this next block, unless, Scott, you have anything to say about that section, I didn't want to go to the next block without getting your comment if you had something.
Oh, God, I was muted. Sorry. I'm always very conscientious about not accidentally laughing and then interrupting your presentations. but I mean, there was so much in that clip. You know, I came across, you know, I watched the RFK speech, not only the one that he did with Trump there, but the one prior to, like earlier in the day when he actually announced like to his team and, you know, his constituents that he was dropping out. And I thought, you know, there was some good stuff in there, man. There's some good stuff in there, man. And I'm just like, don't like, I'm not. I'm like, Scott, just don't get too excited about this stuff. Cause like there's also stuff though in there where he's like, you want Trump to fight against authoritarianism? I'm like, no, okay, no, that's bullshit. Like,
let's not be like Charlie Brown waiting for the football to get pulled out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really trying to avoid that, right? I got my orange shirt on, but I'm not falling for it, right? I'm got my Charlie Brown shirt on today, but I'm not falling for it. Anyway, so but there was some stuff like in his previous speech that he gave earlier that day. It's like a 45-minute speech or whatever, where he's talking about like all of his points, and you know these are his talking points. This is what he talks about all the time about the health, the regulatory agencies, and I'm so on board with all the stuff that he says. It's just like the actual execution of it, or is there anything we can do about it? That's where I have some doubt and speculation. But like, you know, one of the points he made in that other speech was that, you know, they're earmarking like $3 billion for children to get Ozempic. So like down to 6-year-old kids to get this toxic, horrific Ozempic drug.
They have to be on for the rest of their lives. So it's lifetime subscription. If you're an Ozempic person, you want to cut a deal with a politician that's going to make that mandatory and get those lifetime subscriptions, get in on that vaccine wagon.
Yeah.
Another type of lifetime subscriptions. That's why Bill Gates is interested. He's like, dude, it's like software licenses for people's immune systems, and they have to keep up with the injections. Otherwise, their immune system's not going to work, just like they did with the Windows licenses. They're just playing it with the biology of people now.
Yeah. And it's like that right there is such a good point to help explain this to people, because the point he then goes on to make is like, for $3 billion, we could give every American 3 meals a day of whole foods, organic food. And I did the math. So we have like, let's say 330 million. It's a little less than 100. That would be giving every single person a little less than $100 a day for food, right? And I could eat a fully organic whole food diet on $100 a day, easy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the same money that they're going to be funneling in to get kids on Ozempic could literally feed the entire country like 3 meals a day of organic whole food. You know what I mean? It's just like that right there. That tells you the incentive is not health. It never is. Like, I know you guys know this, but it's literally profit for these companies, and the company that makes Ozempic is a company called Novo Nordisk, and now they're out of Europe, and their entire business model is based on American obesity. That is literally the only thing that keeps them going. Is they know that America will be obese from all the seed oils and just like all the processed food and the sugar. You know, they're counting on that, and that's their whole business model. You know, and so I mean, I'm like venturing into Q territory, but like if they can get Trump in there and Bobby in there and they can like eradicate all that stuff, man, like I'd be down. How can I help? Like,
yeah, I don't agree with Kamala's policies with Israel, Biden's policies, Trump's policies, or RFK Jr.'s policies.
Yep.
Because they're all the same. It's all the same policy. Unquestioning support, independent of whatever evidence is coming up through history or in the present. So that doesn't really help out. However, I don't live in Israel. I live in America. As far as their concert of synergy with respect to American domestic policy, on the greater part, I probably agree with most of it. RFK Jr. is a little funny around the Second Amendment. He's got some other issues.
That's like a deal breaker right
Trump's
there.
also got some other issues. He likes to like talk about the swamp, but surround himself with the swamp and not really do anything about. I mean, he's expanded the swamp actually a little bit. So those little things, but whatever. Like I said, we're kids in the backseat with the steering wheel. We're not determining the direction of the deep state with our voting.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.